Next Radio 2018 with Broadcast Bionics. Next Radio.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name's Suchandrika and I made a podcast. Oh, good, it is working. About the show Black Mirror. That's me there. And that is my partner in crime, Daniel Jackson, or producer Dan. So we were working together at the Daily Mirror. And as you can imagine, newspapers are looking for new ways of bringing in money. Did you know about that? So our editor said, you got any ideas for podcasts? And we said, yes, a show about Black Mirror. Who's watched Black Mirror? Yes, most of the room. Who's a fan of the show Black Mirror? Yes, most of the room. So you're probably familiar with that feeling of needing someone to hold you after watching an episode. So that's kind of what the podcast is. That's the pitch. So, some stats. 20,000 listens in the first week. We really upended that general thing of waiting for a podcast to grow, and I'll tell you how we did that. 150,000 listens in 5 months. That's from December 2017 to May 2018. And it's on hiatus after 30 episodes, but still getting listeners. And do we recognise this guy? It's Wyatt Russell, who's the lead in Playtest and came onto the podcast, in fact. So here is a little snippet. We got an interview with Charlie Brooker and Annabelle Jones, who made the show. And I think this really helped as well with getting that initial audience. So here's a little listen.
Hello, and welcome to Black Mirror Cracked, the podcast for all your Black Mirror needs. My name's Suchandrika, and I'll be your host.
We've got Black Museum, which is like White Christmas. It's 3 stories in one. Okay. And it's a bit Stephen King-ish, a bit campfire, popcorn. So the tones of them are completely
So more than ever,
disparate.
I think people are not going, it's the unexpected. It's, every film you could say, I have no idea.
Tales of the expected. It's, what's weird is it's a bit of a nightmare in a way that when you're promoting the show or when you're trying to, I don't know what to recommend where people should start.
That's actually a good thing for us. You don't know which episode to start with, because you can start with any episode and then listen to the podcast. There's no sense of narrative arc that you have to start from the beginning. So, community is really important. Who has watched Black Mirror and then thought, I'll watch a bit of Love Island next? There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But who's talking about your subject? Can you find them on Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram? Can you find them on BuzzSumo, which is a really great online tool for looking at who's sharing content around your subject, so I'd use BuzzSumo. If people are talking about your subject, you've probably got a good idea for a podcast. Niche is a good thing. And then we have Zeitgeist. What's going on in the world right now? Has anyone watched the national anthem, the first episode of Black Mirror? It's horrifying. So we made sure we put out this podcast at the same time and date that season 4 of Black Mirror came out on Netflix. So it's 8 a.m, Friday the 29th of December. And that really helped us get an audience who just watched the show, had that aforementioned feeling of I need a hug, and then went searching for a podcast to make them feel less alone. And then we have the power of SEO. So search engine optimized language. You can see I'm a digital journalist. And there we have Bryce Dallas Howard in Nosedive rating people. So number 1, the name, Black Mirror Cracked. That's obviously quite good for SEO because people start searching for Black Mirror and podcast, and then we tend to come up. And then secondly, if you're not writing articles around each episode, I recommend that you do. I'm not really going for show notes. We're doing a bit of a summary about themes. But again, that puts us in Google, and it means that we sit there waiting and growing an audience. The power of social media. So as an example of a headliner video, if you're not using headliner for trailers, I recommend that you do. I don't recommend that you use the way I interview.
Dustin is like one of the most hated characters in the whole of Black Mirror.
Is that right? Have you done a poll on that?
According to like Tumblr and places on the internet and Reddit and things like that, you've got like serial killers, someone who's blocked from humanity, just like all these people, but Dustin comes in with a lot of hate. So I just really thought to build a lot of rapport with you, if I just open with that. And
I just don't know how I feel about that. It's harsh, isn't it?
It got better from then on. It got better. So if you're not using headliner, I recommend using that. If we just go, nope, there is no going back. There's almost too much going back. I'd recommend using that because social platforms are not set up to share audio. You might have noticed that. So it's really helpful to have a visual, and we got really good click-through rates on those videos too. So Headliner is definitely one to use on social. And then Evergreen-ness. So do you remember this news story from earlier this year? What was he up to in front of the Congress? He was talking about his social platform and how data mining had led to really unforeseen real-world consequences. It reminded me and all of Reddit of that picture. Has anyone seen that episode, Hated in the Nation, finale of season 3? It's the one with the bees. And they look pretty similar. She looks sadder, generally a lot more expression happening there. And on the right, we've got Kelly MacDonald playing DCI Karen Parkin, and she's sitting in front of a parliamentary committee explaining why the use of Twitter in that universe has led to data mining and some horrible real-world consequences, which are actually murders. So I noticed this similarity, so did Reddit, and so I pulled forward that episode and put it out that week so we could hit the kind of news hook and get a bit of that SEO. But also I got the Mirror Technology team in to talk about what on earth all of this means, what was Mark Zuckerberg talking about, what does it mean for the future? And it also means that it's a bit of a resource for the future as well. If people start looking for Mark Zuckerberg the second time he's pulled up in front of Congress, which I'm sure will happen, they will hopefully find our podcast and our story in the Google results as well. So think about where you can grow an audience in the future by giving your podcast and your writing around the podcast a bit of an evergreen quality. So we have 5 questions to help your audience growth. Try and ask yourself these questions even before you pitch an idea for a podcast. Number 1, is there a community for your subject? If other people are talking about it, they'll want to hear you talking about it too. They can also be a source of not only an audience, but new ideas. What can you talk about in episode 250? Maybe check Reddit and see what you can find there. Is your subject part of the Zeitgeist? If it is, that will give your podcast a bit of a bump. So think about when a new show is starting, what's happening in the news, that sort of thing. Can you help listeners find your podcast? So use SEO wisely. People don't really use listen notes unless they know about audio, but people are Googling all the time. So make sure that your podcast title will come up. And then we have, can you promote effectively on social? So that Headliner video, I'd really recommend. Also, keep your social platforms going. On Twitter, do speak back to people who at you. On Facebook, maybe set up a group, because they tend to work better than pages at the moment, and do talk to people who join you in that group, because they're fans just like you. And lastly, can your podcast stay relevant over time? So that bit with Mark Zuckerberg, that gives us a bit more search value. It also gives informational value to the reader. And then it makes them think, if I listen to that podcast, I might learn something, it might be interesting. Can you do that for your podcast too? And then we have, thank you very much for listening. Just a big thank you to Matt and James for inviting me. I love talking about the podcast. I'd never made any audio before I made this, and it's become a whole new world. I've fallen in love. I want to do more. So thank you very much. Thank you.